Shalom, Rabbi Mordechai here. It's amazing to have this opportunity to, share some ideas. We see so much division in the world today. We see this group fighting against this group, and I'm not just talking about the war that's going on right now in Israel, where innocent people are being murdered. I'm talking about in the world in general. We've noticed over the last 10 years, 20 years that there's all these different political groups, different factions. We have people that have certain philosophies about how the world should be, and it's just clashing all over the place. And as a person who's spiritual, as a person who, knows that there's a God and knows that, everything is leading to something good, how do we make sense of all this that's going on? And not only that, how do we connect to people when the culture is so divisive, and everyone feels that their security and their safety is in their particular beliefs. So there's a very famous idea in Judaism. It's a story about when the Torah was given to mankind. Before Israel, the nation of Israel, received the Torah, God went to many different nations. And he offered all the different nations this opportunity to take on the Torah for their lifestyle. And every nation had this reason why they wanted to do it, why they didn't want to do it, why this reason why they didn't want to do it. But ultimately, the Jewish people accepted it and they went forward. Now, the sages also teach that within those nations, there were individuals that wanted to take the Torah, but the collective part of their society didn't want the Torah, and so they were canceled out. So many of those people we know later on, we believe in the idea of reincarnation, so they came and they eventually joined the nation of Israel in later life experiences. But the idea, one of the things we could take from that story is that no matter what the different beliefs are that people have and how they see the world, there's an aspect of every group of people that there's individuals within there that want truth. And they want the truth and they're cloaked by the environment that they're in. And so when we go forward in life, the challenge is to think and to see past the physical, right? The way I like to explain it, I wrote a book, Mind of the Black Jew, and it's basically things that I learned while I was in yeshiva, right? And I said, Mind of the Black Jew, I'm black, I'm African American, and I'm a Jew, so why not, bring a sense of, we use the word kavod, a sense of honor to the things I learned from my teachers. So, Mind of the Black Jew. But in my second chapter, I talk about this idea, the 1% reality and the 99% reality. The 1% reality is everything that we see with our physical eyes. The 99% reality is all the things that exist with the physicality, but is total spiritual and is blinded to the eyes. In the Torah, it begins, it says, Bereshis bara Elohim et hashamayim v'ha'aretz. It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Heavens, meaning the 99%, the spiritual, the earth, meaning the 1% physical. And so our challenge in life is to bring those two things together. And not just as it relates to analyzing the Torah, but in our everyday lives with people that we meet. Every one of us has a body, and every one of us has a soul. The body, we could see all day. I go around, this person's black, this person's white, this person's tall, this person's short, everything, right? Blonde hair, brown hair, everything. But the challenge is to look past the 1% and to connect to the people's 99%. And that's the soul. And the more that we as people can see that all of us have a soul, and all the souls that we have are connected to God. And that soul is rooted in truth, right? And truth meaning everybody has their own unique experience. Everybody has their own uniqueness. Everybody has their own contribution to make. But what makes it the challenge is that us as individuals and in us as a collective, we tend to only focus on the physicality. And the physicality is where all these different groups and organizations and philosophies come from that ultimately make us divided because we're dealing with the physical reality. Now, the wisdom of the Torah, right, which is all open for all of humanity, that wisdom teaches us how to see past the physical and connect to the spiritual. Even the Hebrew calendar, When you hear about the Jewish people having this holiday, that holiday, Rosh Hashanah, Pesach, all these different things, we're connecting to the spiritual of that day. Shabbat, the spiritual of that day, right? And so that is training us to see this aspect of the spirituality in every single person. So we cannot judge people. If we want to connect to those group of people that have truth, who desire truth, that's going to require us to look past just the physical. And it's going to make us have to look at the spirituality of each other, what our true goals are, what do we really want out of life, not the political talking points or the rhetoric or the language we learned from the philosophers of yesteryear, but rather today. And how do I connect to my personal soul, which is important, and also how do I connect to other people's soul? How do I see people walking down the street and see that this person has a soul, and this soul is special, and it's rooted in holiness. It's connected to the master of the universe, right? So the lesson is for today is that how do I wake up in the morning and acknowledge that I have a soul and I have a body, and that my soul has needs, just like my body has needs. The person, if I'm married, my wife has a soul, she has a body. My children have a soul and a body. My neighbors, my community, everyone has this duality. And so the key to spirituality and the key to bringing everything together is knowing that it's only through the soul consciousness that I can connect to my ultimate potential, and through acknowledging that other people have a soul, is that we connect to the collective potential of us as humanity. So when we connect to the soul, when we connect to the inner essence of who we are, it's going to be very difficult to go to war. It's going to be very difficult to fight with each other. It's going to be very difficult to see each other in a place of division. Things like racism, bigotry, segregation, hate, all of that is rooted in the consciousness of the physical, of the 1% reality. When we talk about creating a society of peace, a society of truth, is when we see the fact that everyone has a soul and all those souls are connected. And if my soul is damaged, so is the next person's. And if the next person's soul is damaged, so is mine. We're all connected. So, for example, we have this war right now in Israel. It's a terrible experience. There's innocent people being murdered, and the root of it is there's no awareness of the soul. That's why children are being butchered, people are being burnt alive, people killing elderly people, and people are saying, how could you do this? How could people do that? This is the example of not having any awareness of the inner essence of other human beings. This is the example. And truthfully, the sages teach, everything that we see in the world is a reflection of us. It's not just over there. It's not just a random thing. The whole world is a mirror. The whole world is reflecting us and what's going on in our consciousness. And it plays itself out because God is trying to teach us a lesson. So when we see people acting inhumane, completely focused on the physicality, I got to look at myself and say, am I doing that in my everyday life? Am I Hamas in my everyday life? Am I going out and not connecting to my children and connecting to them and burning them and treating them with hatred, treating elderly with not kindness, treating my fellow man with callousness and coldness? Now, it may not be expressed in the physical darkness that we saw in the south of Israel on Simchat Torah, on Shabbat, but we could be acting out those same principles and bringing the same destruction in our own way. So how do we heal this? How do we heal the world? We take this as an example and say, you know what? I want to do something different in my life. If Hamas is murdering and they're killing indiscriminately, and even their own citizens, they're literally sending rockets and bombs and killing their own citizens to make a political point. No consciousness of the soul. No awareness of the soul. And God is giving us a movie to watch of this cruelty that's happening. But we can't just point the finger at them. We have to look at ourselves too and say, where am I acting out this Hamas consciousness in my personal life? Am I being discriminative? Am I being racist? Am I being prejudiced? Am I segregating myself? Am I looking down on people? Am I treating people unjust? Because if I can able to look at myself and see that way, this is the beginning of the change. This is the beginning of the change. And like I said in the beginning, the sages teach this principle that God brought the Torah to all of humanity. And Am Israel, the Jewish people, the Israelites, they accepted it. But all the nations had people within those communities that also wanted to take the Torah. They also wanted it. So the people, the righteous people of the world, are the people who want to see the world as a reflection of their consciousness. And the way to do that is by seeing that the inner essence of themselves and everyone else around them. So my blessing to everybody seeing this, sharing this moment with me, is to know that the world can be fixed. The world can be healed, but it requires us to elevate our consciousness. We have to leave the body consciousness. We have to leave the ego consciousness that we know what everything is. And we got to elevate to the spiritual. Hashemayim v'ha'aretz. We have to bring those two things together. The heaven, the spiritual, and the earth. We got to bring them together. And when we do that in our everyday life, we destroy the consciousness of Hamas. Because it's not just take these people out. Fine, we get rid of all the Hamas. But does that consciousness of hatred leave the world? Does that consciousness of discrimination, of racism, of hatred, of barbarianism, does it leave the world? It only leaves the world when we change our consciousness. This is the true war. This is clearing out the internal Gaza of the Hamas. Is when we look at the world as a reflection of us and we decide to change ourselves and our consciousness to remove the intelligence, that frame of thinking that it could allow people to exist like Hamas, to exist like the Nazis, and to exist like many other evil groups that have existed throughout history. Shalom.